Ladies and gentlemen, it's a special episode of Here's Why You're Wrong. We've done a lot of talking about things that have happened in the offseason, power rankings, things of that nature. But with some big breaking news right before opening day, Brenden and I figured we'd hop on, including a special guest that will be joining us. So why don't we just jump right into it? Brenden, it's kind of cool. This is, I feel like, what our show was built for.
It really is. The one downside to the eMLB format is that things take time to develop. And so it's really hard to talk about them in the moment. But today, we have the greatest sports drama story to hit eMLB, at least since I've been here.
I think so. Let's just put it up on screen right now. According to Buster Only in the Discord, potential superstar and third overall pick Ed Brown could be on his way out of Chicago even before even stepping foot on a major league diamond. Throughout the day, we have seen more updates, including the White Sox representatives have been unable to be reached out for further comment at this time. Sources have not identified if there's been a fallout, a possible change of direction from ownership, unsure if players seeking a move or team. Then the Chicago White Sox quickly after announced that the press conference with the manager had been canceled and they apologized for any inconvenience. Jeff Passan mentioned he ran into Ed Brown's agent in Atlanta. He was on the phone and declined to answer any questions. And then outside of Guaranteed Rate Field, fans are growing impatient with today's potential developments surrounding Ed Brown. Chicago PD is already on the scene to keep things orderly. Brenden, your first reaction to seeing this news in the Discord?
My first reaction to seeing this news in the Discord is, how is it that a single player is able to stir this much trouble up about a team? A player who, mind you, has not even played at the major leagues. He's played half a minor league season. How is this causing so much drama?
Well, why don't we find out why this is causing so much drama? Let's bring in our special guest for the day, Mr. Tim Lowry himself, the creator of Ed Brown. Tim, how you doing? Thanks for coming on.
Doing good. Is it always this slow just before opening day? Or?
Yeah, it sort of slows down. It's our little lull before we get into the season. You know, we have the lull of the off season, then spring training gets all exciting, and then we have a little lull, and then opening day starts. But Tim, I know you and I talked a little bit back and forth, but you were the third overall pick last year. Your player Ed Brown. This is our first time having a CCP on rather than a GM, so it's really interesting. Talk to me. Obviously, I don't know how much you and Hedges talk at all. The manager over in Chicago. What was your first reaction when you saw your name was put out there from these reports?
He had briefly mentioned to me early this morning that there were some discussions around Ed and would I be okay with that? And so I'm like, yeah, he's the general manager of the team, right? So, I'm just glad to be in as a CCP and whatever he wants to do. And it's apparently, but based on all the traffic, like you just pointed out, it's something clearly going down or about to. So, not really sure.
So do we have it from the horse's mouth that the player is not the one asking out?
Oh, no. To your guy's point, haven't even set foot on the field yet. Not exactly, this is not an Eli Manning situation. Every chance I get to trash Eli, I'm
That's
all for
fair.
it. So yeah, we're ready to play baseball wherever that is.
Now, obviously, you're a Detroit Tigers fan in real life. Do you feel like that has any reason why you may be a little more okay with moving to potentially another team? We've heard a lot of different discussions. We don't even know where he's ending up. We don't even know where this trade talk is happening. We're just going off the information provided to us in the Discord and the small amount of comments we have from a few other places. But I don't know how much he shared with you. Is there an ideal destination for you to end up if you're going to end up anywhere? Like, is there anything like that?
Not really, because even in the eMLB universe, the Tigers are a lot different than IRL Detroit. So I have no preference one way or the other. I haven't really heard any official destinations. I've heard some of the rumors that have been posted, in the Discord, but I haven't heard any. I'm pretty sure that Hedges would reach out to me and let me know what was going on before it becomes official. But to this point, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit. I want to get a little bit into your backstory of being a CCP. Talk to us a little bit about where Ed Brown came from and what the inspiration behind the sweet swinging third baseman is.
Well, his nickname kind of gives it away. He was my grandfather on my mom's side. I lived with him and my grandmother from the time I was about 8 until I was in my mid-20s, and matter of fact was, for all intents and purposes, his hospice care until he passed away. He is where my love of baseball started. When I was 10 years old was when Pete Rose was on his hit streak in 1978. And my job every day was to tell him two things out of the newspaper. Did Pete get a hit? And did Reggie Jackson get a home run? So, and it just kind of started with that Monday night baseball, Saturday baseball, game of the week, playoffs, all-star games. We were always there in front of the TV watching it together, and he taught me a lot about baseball. So that's where that comes from. The third baseman, he was always built really stocky, but was very short-handed. So he was never going to be a middle infielder type. And it came down to me either between third base and catchers, and just thought I would just go with third base.
There's definitely some room for more CCPs to dominate the hot corner. So I think that was a good choice.
Yeah.
Now we've seen the T-shirt you posted, and we've seen the comments in I should say in the Discord before. But you were drafted ahead of Danny Smith Jr., who many regard as probably the best CCP ever to come out of the draft.
Including me.
Including you. I mean, you've put it out there that, Danny Smith Jr. should have gone third. Hedges obviously had a movement. He thought third base is what he needed. What does it say to you, the faith that Hedges had in you, picking you third overall over what many consider to be one of the best players in the league now?
I think it came down to the fact that I was active and just, really interested in, and just basically everything I can do to get my hands on eMLB information. I'm downloading the new file every time it comes out, and there's always like a million questions I have, and I go research players and things like that. And it really impresses me that I'm not the only one that feels that way. It feels like to me, all 30 GMs are doing the exact same thing. So I've always felt like, I'm in it for the long haul. I love Kamish's streams. I love the play-by-play. I love the chat. I love the Discord. It's kind of a second home.
It's a really interesting thing. Tim, we're going to go ahead and have you sit tight. We'll bring you back in to talk a little bit more about these rumors in just a few minutes here. I want to go ahead and talk with you, Brenden. Brenden, you and I are definitely a little bit on opposite ends of this. Talk to me a little bit about what your thinking is with this whole thing. Obviously, we have no idea where he's going to end up, or even if he is going to move. That's the thing about this that makes it so interesting.
You know what?
So
it really is.
What's your take on trading your third overall pick from this past season? You've barely seen 6 months of him, for a guy who can, be in control on your team for years to come.
What are you getting? It all boils down to what are you getting. And I think it's really suspect that this happens immediately after the Toronto Blue Jays GM confirms that he has several offers for Vlad Guerrero Jr. and that his likelihood of moving him has gone up. This morning, a report came out of Toronto saying that the likelihood went from 10 to 50% that he would be moved. And then immediately after that, rumors start swirling about Ed Brown.
Yeah, look, straight from the horse's mouth. And I do have permission from Harris to share this quote live here with you guys. He said, I can give you some insider info. I can say that I've received offers from 10 teams, 6 from teams in the West Division. I can say that a deal is now 90% likely, and it is between 3 and 4 teams all in West Divisions. So Vladdy will likely go to a West team, just a matter of who.
And I feel now also to break out some breaking news that I have, that there's that 90% likelihood is almost certainly so Vlad Guerrero Jr. can follow in his dad's footsteps and go to Anaheim.
You really think Anaheim is the destination? Now,
There are some sources close to the deal who think that that is possible.
And I will tell you, there are some sources close to the deal that nothing has been finalized yet. And according to sources, this is straight from the horse's mouth. You'd be surprised how poor most of the offers are.
Yeah. Oh, everyone's always going to underbid.
And that's fair. But let's talk about this. And I want to pull this. I understand that, there's talent like Vladdy. If Vladdy is the player. We don't even know if Vladdy is the player that is being discussed with Ed Brown. And I want to reiterate this for a fact. We have no idea who Ed Brown is getting traded for, if he's even getting traded. My gut tells me it may not even be for Vladdy. My gut tells me it may be somewhere else for a big player that hasn't even been talked about on the block. Just because we've heard how much movement wants to go around. We know Hedges does his due diligence and talks to everyone. So in my opinion, I think that with Ed Brown, you have a special storytelling aspect here. And I get, we're all trying to win a World Series at the end of the day. And CCPs are a great aspect of this league. But I think at a certain point, you realize what kind of value a CCP has when you can add them to your team. They can boost themselves. They have the ability with someone who's as active as Tim and Ed, the fact that he can really help you tell a story. And if you could, ride this story out of just think in Chicago, if, Ed stays there and Ed becomes your team captain. And let's say in 3 years after Hedges feels if he needs to rebuild his team, you're lifting a commissioner's trophy with Ed Brown, your captain, your CCP guy who brought you into this position and helps you raise a trophy. The storytelling aspect of that from the CCP perspective, and Commish always says, this league is to tell stories. There's no better story than that.
I think that is a phenomenal story, but I really don't think you should base your entire team building philosophy around stories. Having Ed Brown on your team and having the story that comes with it is great. But the White Sox are not in a strong position right now, and frankly, can they, I don't know how patient Hedges is willing to be. Maybe he feels like trading Ed Brown now is the best story to make his team better. Because ultimately, it's a World Series either way if you can swing it.
It's a World Series, and I get that. And don't get me wrong. And mind you, I've been one to prove that I don't really care about stories. I will make trades to make my team
the trades are the stories themselves, frankly.
Right.
I think the stories tell themselves in this league.
But I think at some point you have to realize what kind of a valuable player at a premium position of third base you have with Ed Brown, that it really creates something amazing.
It is, and that's what really makes me wonder what happened today. Why did this start? What prompted these kind of reports to start coming out about a player in his position?
Yeah, I want to share with you before we bring Tim back in some quotes from the Discord today as well. Tim said, Tim thanks everyone for the expressions of concern during this difficult time. # Brown strong. As well as he's curious to see what happens. It's a bit of a business side. It's just like the real thing. And then, as he mentioned earlier, when he decided to make the CCP it isn't exactly how he imagined, but he loved taking this journey with his former grandfather. So it's a really cool story. We're going to go ahead and bring Tim back in here. Tim, I think we got a few more questions for you, and we'll have you go out one more time and bring you back in when we discuss something else. But talk to me about, we've obviously been talking about the story aspect and how he was created. But let's talk about the baseball business side of things. You mentioned it's a business, but do you think, taking yourself out of it as Ed Brown, just being Tim and looking at this from an outside, because you're one of the most active people in the Discord, active people in the Twitch channel, do you feel like Chicago becomes better or worse by dealing Ed Brown, or does it base it on the return because of Ed Brown's value as a CCP?
It really depends on the return. I mean, Hedges is trying to build up a team that had, at the beginning of last season, had a lot of holes. And he's been trying to close the gap. If he can take one player and turn around 4 or 5, how many other players he can get, that's something you'd have to look at. I mean, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of the name, but Lagugas on the White Sox, who is also a third baseman, has not been hitting that bad. Fairly decent. I mean, he's no Brooks Robinson at third, but you could live with that if you can get a package that shores you up somewhere else. So, I get it. I mean, you got to kick the tires on everything. And it's not lost on me. Ed hasn't hit in Winter League. Ed hasn't hit in spring training. And I know ratings are ratings. And I also know that OTP will, every once in a while, you have a guy who's rated great who will go out and hit 240 for his career. So there's that you got to look at too.
That's a big point of it too. And I think I'll pose this to both you, Tim, and you, Brenden, as well. Talk to me a little bit about what Ed Brown, I mean, obviously, I think defensively, he's probably one of the best defensive players, or could be one of the best defensive players in the league. But do you feel like there is a destination outside of, obviously, the rumors of Toronto, just from the Discord itself, that, I think everyone, when they saw Ed Brown could be on the move, automatically thought Toronto? You know what I mean? Is there another destination that might make you go, that makes sense?
Well, I mean, the hat makes me want to question some things about a certain non-trading GM in our Discord who's probably looking to start making some moves. But in all seriousness, I don't think that outside of Baltimore and myself having Bluth, I think that there are very few teams who don't need a massive future upgrade at third base. Ed Brown has the potential to be what Bluth is, which is the best defensive third baseman in the league. I mean, probably not San Diego with Tatis, probably not Tampa with Franco. Everywhere else is fair game.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that has kept coming up on stream is as teams would roll through and we're playing the game of the night, it's like it was obvious that third base is a struggle, or there's a real life player there who is already 3 years past his in real life. And so for the most part, with the exceptions that you mentioned, Brenden, they're on the way down. So yeah, I mean, it's a spot anybody would want to.
I do want to ask you. I want to actually. I don't want to ask you. I want to ask your agent. Okay. Is there a situation that would be more? Is there a team situation that is more amenable to you? Is there one? Is you one you really want to go to?
Do we answer that? Okay. There's a couple that jump out, but I'm gonna keep my powder dry until whatever happens. Because again, I'm not really in a position to influence. I mean, if Hedges already has a deal set, perfect.
Part of me wants to see. Part of me hates this, but also part of me does think it'd be really interesting to have a little bit more NBA style trade dynamics and maybe at times.
Yeah. And like and I told Hedges the same thing. It's even when he was talking about drafting me, he's your player. So whatever you want to do with him, if you want to make him a full-time left fielder, if you want to make him a DH, if if he even wanted to keep him on the farm this whole year, I was fine with that.
Really?
It's whatever. Yeah, I mean, because I don't know. I mean, the CCP adds a fascinating angle for me from a player side, but it also adds a little bit of a complication in my judgment for you guys, because now you've got people who, oh, he wasn't on stream tonight. Is he pissed? Or I haven't heard from him, or he's not trying to get boost. What's going? And you've got all of this relationship management that's got to go on. So you've got a guy like Cody who's got 28 CCP.
Yes. Yes.
I don't. Now there's two ways to do that too. Bleep it. This is my team, or you try to work with everybody. So I've always been really upfront with anybody who was talking about me. Sherteen, he's my player. If he plays, if he's a Moonlight Graham and comes in for one at bat, job done. I got to see Ed hit a home run in Winter League ball in a game that I managed. I can die happy.
That
So
must have been. I mean, I know, mind you, I'm a GM and I have my CCP, but trading for my own CCP and seeing him get his first major league hit because we got to see that live on stream, that was something that I don't know, Brennan, because you don't have any of your own CCPs, correct?
I have one CCP. He's in San Diego.
Exactly.
I'm
So
happy
for
with him
me,
being there.
that's like, I think, like Tim, you were saying, you managed your player when he got his Winter League home run. I got my player and got to manage him when he hit his first major league hit. Like, there's something about that I hate to be cliche, but it makes you so romantic about baseball.
oh, I was sitting there in tears. It's just like tonight is the Field of Dreams game, and I can never make it through the introductions of that. Last year was just I was a mess. So yeah, it's the romance of this game that really draws me.
I can't wait for tonight's. I know that's not necessarily, but as we're recording this, the game will be happening in just a few hours here. Tim, we're gonna go ahead and have you stay put for one more time. Me and Brennan are gonna talk for a few minutes. But Brennan, we just sort of heard a little bit from him, but I want to talk about the flip side of this, and talk about the Toronto potential dealing just while we're here. Obviously, it's been mentioned in the Discord. I don't know any of the deals that are happening outside of what I've shared live on here. Um, as much as I hate to say it, though, can we see a surprise team come in late? I feel like that happens a lot with these type of deals. You're like, oh, I sort of know exactly where he's going to go, and then some team just blows a deal out of the water.
No, and the only reason I say that is the amount of capital it's going to take to move him limits him to a handful of teams.
Fair.
I think by now the teams that want him and have the capital have already put their bid in, and any other potential bidder is not going to match what Harris wants and should get for him.
Does this? I feel like Vladdy is one of those guys who sort of goes under the radar, for lack of a better term, because of the team he plays on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And as much as I hate that, because being a real life baseball fan, you know what Vlad Jr. brings to the table, and it's in a fun team in Toronto. But do you think that Vladdy on the move creates a potential issue, or creates, Harris now is sort of waving the Chris Flexen, the white flag for this year and saying, okay, let me rebuild my farm system and let me compete in the next 2 years in what is widely considered one of the top 3 divisions in all of eMLB.
The flag was already waved, and that's not a disservice to Harris. He inherited a team in an absolute miserable state, and he has done an amazing job bringing in waves and waves and waves of young talent. The team's not there. Trading Guerrero now, there's two schools of thought here. You can sit and wait on him. You can have him continue to play on this team, and by the time he's almost 30, if he's like 27 now in file, I believe. If he's 30, the team's competitive, and you have several years of great ball out of him. Or you trade him right now, and you make your team immensely better by bringing in top-end guys to complement the waves of talent you already have coming up. I think that no matter what you pick, you're a couple years, you're at least 2 years away from being a real competitor, and maybe you try to come out of this long rebuild even better than you were going to with just the guys you've been drafting.
What do you think the asking price is for him?
At least your farm's top 3 prospects.
You think so?
It should be.
That's a real interesting take on it. For me, I think that this makes the most sense to trade him, I think, now, while his value is as high as it is. But I don't know if you want to trade him in league, if that makes sense.
I'm very much a firm believer in that. I agree. It's why I shipped Verdugo to you instead of shipping Verdugo anywhere else. In this particular case, it's not a 1-year rental. It's a long-term piece. It's going to suck no matter where he goes. Sure, it will suck to have him in league, but I think you take the best return no matter where it ends up going.
I think that's an accurate statement. Now, the other flip side of this is if you're a GM, are you obviously you aren't, you probably aren't. I won't say you are, because I don't know. We haven't really discussed it. Are you chomping at the bit? I want Vladdy. Or are you skeptical because of the price tag that's attached with him? And, he might be a great player.
Can I be both? If someone told me that I could
pick a
have
side
him,
here. Hold on. It's no fun for an argument's sake if you don't pick a side.
That's fair. I'm chomping at the bit. If I'm any other GM, including if I'm myself or any other GM, I'm chomping at the bit. And I don't care what it costs to get him. I'm getting him.
I think I'm a little more of a hesitant GM just because, and this might just be my situation and feeling like I want to make sure that my farm system stays intact a little bit longer, just because I have some older pieces who are on their way out. I don't know if that's just a me thing specifically or what it is, but I think in general, that's what you have to think.
Yeah, I mean, it makes your team so much better right now. And he's only for only 27.5 million. He's worth more than that for the next 8 years. He's 27 years old. He's one of, if not the best hitters in the league. You can't say no to it, no matter what. You can't say no to it.
That's fair. Let's bring Tim on one more last time. Another hat change, Tim. What are you trying to send messages to certain GMs out here? Is your agent behind this trying to stir the pot? What's going on?
I'm just going through the rotation. We've got the alternate Richmond Squirrels that I didn't get to, and also one of my favorites, Negro League Pittsburgh Crawfords.
All right.
So we love the representation. we love it.
Negro and wait a minute though. I know a lot of people watching this podcast are still in the floor from hearing you say you are a hesitant GM.
I didn't say I was hesitant as a GM. I'm hesitant about this specific deal because of
gotcha. Okay. All right. Just want to be clear.
I'll reiterate.
Okay.
For some clarification.
I mean, even then, that's still shocking. Have you ever met a deal you were hesitant about?
Yes.
I'm standing by my prediction. Verdugo is gone by the All-Star break.
I love it. I love the predictions. I love these predictions that are coming, except for Denver. Denver, you know what? I will take this opportunity to tell you I am pressed. I am pissed. You know what? I loved your comment at the top.
He told us they were going to be bad. I mean, they were Schmitty takes. So Tim, a question for you. I know you're not a GM. In your perspective of this, is there a spot where Vladdy goes that makes the most sense? Like I know you see it from a different lens than me and Brenden.
Yeah. I don't know if it makes the most sense, but I would almost expect him to go to a team that has been kind of working to, it's almost like the White Sox kind of thing, where it's a team that's been building for a couple of years, and it just feels, okay, we've been stuck at 75 to 85 wins. It's time to do something to see if we can jazz it up. And maybe the farm system has to get ripped apart to do that.
Do I dare say a team in the NL East like the Philadelphia Phillies could be
Philadelphia came to mind. I thought about Colorado, but then I'm like,
there's one obvious example. There's one obvious candidate here.
What's the obvious candidate then, Brenden? Please.
You say it, Ed, because I think we're on the same wavelength.
I was thinking Philly and Colorado.
Oh, Seattle.
Ooh. Yeah.
So you talked about teams on the up and up who've been slowly building but stuck in that second tier. That have a lot of high end talent that they're reaching a point now where
could I dare say to challenge? Could I dare say to challenge with San Diego? We talked about them on our power rankings episode. The Dodgers,
and it matches that whole Western Division thing.
Yeah, both of those mentioned the Western Division. And I'd say also a dark horse maybe a little bit in this race, and it's not an invisible horse this time, is the team that Tim has on his hat, the Houston Astros. we've talked about them sort of being that fourth place team. You could add a guy like Vladdy and potentially boost your team up really, really high in this division.
I mean, they take Vladdy, and I think they're challenging for the division.
If Vladdy goes to Houston or Seattle, the AL West becomes even more interesting than it already has been.
And if he goes to the Dodgers demolish the rest of the NL West because the lineup is the one question mark on that team.
What if he goes to San Francisco?
That one is going to be probably a no for me just because of who's on the team already.
Fair.
And who goes? I mean,
I think if you have to sit right here, your top 4 destinations right now are the Dodgers, the Mariners, the Astros, and probably the Angels just because following in his dad's footsteps.
And with prospect depth to do it.
And I'm going to throw out this one as much as I'd hate for it to happen. Talk about following his dad's footsteps. I know it's not Montreal, but Washington, the Montreal franchise and the Washington Nationals link there. Not a West Coast team, but just throwing something.
Oh, man. Can you imagine if your first baseman, third baseman, and DH are Diggs, Anthony, and Guerrero?
As an NL East GM, I don't like that at all.
And it's funny, too, because trading a real-life player as opposed to a CCP, it doesn't get my attention as much, but I heard what you guys were saying in the last segment. Because they're kind of a known commodity, you know what you're getting. Plus, there's always that's right, he's 3 years older. Let me look at his ratings and all of that. But it also makes sense because they are a known commodity. You kind of know what you're getting.
And does it make them, let's say in 4 seasons time, 2 years down the road, Vlad is 31 years old, starting to hit a decline. With the re-rate rule, if it's still around at that time, does that also give them a little boost as well? Because as they start to decline, you can just re-rate them and they go back up a little bit in potential and overall?
I mean, I think we'll see how the re-rate rule gets applied in the future as the rule continues to age, maybe.
Yeah.
But
and also, I mean, because I've always had this feeling like, I know Kamish doesn't want to turn this into like a spreadsheet, 1 million spreadsheets he's got to track. But I could see a time where prospect, that the potential ratings get cut off at a certain age. And maybe even slowly kind of, whereas now you can use 30%, maybe that starts to reduce as a player gets older. So it becomes more in line with real life because, there's not too many 30-year-old people playing baseball getting a spike in potential. So
I'm trying to think of like any. I'm trying to think of like any examples, and I can't really think of any examples of guys who are older who just cracked the big leagues. It's becoming less and less common with more guys coming out of high school or guys who are coming out of college but only need a year and a half in development in the minor leagues. Like, for example, I work for the Minnesota Twins organization, and we had our first round draft pick, Brooks Lee, who went straight from college, played like 5 games in the complex league, and then jumped straight to high A. Didn't even go to low A. So there's these, like, you think about it that way, it's really honestly kind of an interesting take and an interesting point.
I think baseball's changing that way too. Whereas just like in other sports where a guy was allowed to sit for a year or 2, or in baseball's case 3, before you put him in the major leagues, now they see this raw talent. There's a lot to be said for club control in terms of salary. A 20-year-old is not going to demand, a 9-figure salary. And you've got cost certainty at that point. And you know what you're getting, and you're just kind of rolling the dice. But I think it's worth it, as opposed to being the team that spends all this time building up this player, and then he goes somewhere else in free agency.
Yeah.
Just when he's hitting his high point.
And especially when you if you get good value out of a player when he's 22, that's when he makes his debut. He makes his debut at 22, and he's good for you. You get more value out of him versus when he makes his debut at 25.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially if you can lock him up long term.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just a matter of shelf life at that point.
And I think also what's going to be really interesting is also seeing if there's any changes to in eMLB specifically, how the contracts are structured or negotiations work or anything like that, because we're seeing less and less guys hit the arbitration number. We're seeing a lot of guys get extended right around the time they're going to hit arbitration, or, they get extended for 3 years to eat up their arbitration, and then they become free agents at the same time they're able to. And I also think because of both the CCPs and also because of the, rate we extend players at, we're seeing guys like Ian Happ and Victor Robles and eMLB sit out there in free agency. Also because of the draft pick attached to them. Like me, I pick at 11 this year, and I've thought about signing Happ or Robles.
You won't lose. You don't lose that first round draft pick, right?
Right, but you know how much value is found in the second and third rounds? That's where my player was drafted. That's where I drafted Gorgalicious Booty Womper. I have 2 third-round picks this year. I don't want to lose either of those because who knows what's going to be available.
I think that kind of ties into a lot of the fear of GMs have in this league of the future and and obsessively needing to plan for years from now. And I think that leads a lot of teams to make mistakes with their current handling of their team because they worry too much about how good they'll be in 2 to 3 years instead of how good they'll be this year. If I had the money, I would have signed Robles already. Draft pick be damned. I did it with Brenden Belt before the season started last year. Brenden Belt was a valuable contributor to a team that made the World Series. 3rd round draft pick was well worth that.
Fair. That's a really fair. That's a really fair point. Tim, thank you for joining us, but you're not done. You're not done.
Okay.
You get to sit in everyone's favorite segment. You're going to sit on the hot seat here.
Oh, God.
You get some rapid fire questions. We'll also have you in here as well. You'll get to talk. You'll get to sit here and ask me and Brenden some questions as all, because everyone's favorite segment, the hot seat, brought to you by no sponsor yet. If you'd like to sponsor us, we're right here for it. All right. So, Tim, I'll start off. I know you can't really answer this question because your agent is looming over your shoulder. If Ed Brown goes somewhere, where do you think is not necessarily where you want to go, but the most likely destination?
If I had to pick a spot, because I've been telegraphing Toronto because I've been, just making the same assumption everyone else has. I would, of course, I'd love to see him as a Tiger. My real life grandfather, who this player is based on, loved the Yankees and the Orioles at the same time. I still don't understand how any one human being can do that. Seattle is popping in my head for some reason.
Seattle, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna have to change my question now. That's not because that's what that was. My question for you is: would your agent like a trade to Baltimore?
I'm getting a shrug. I guess it depends on. I guess it would depend on what that looks like. Bluth to me is like this huge reason why he wouldn't go there.
How about let's play this? I'll steal the question from Brenden. How about Atlanta, where you could theoretically just hear me out because I texted this to Brenden. Play with Alvarez, Burnitz, Brown, and Pearson as the core 4 for the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, that's pretty. I like
that. All right. So
the only thing I'd fear is that every day I've got to check my Discord to make sure Aiden isn't dealing me somewhere.
I love it. All right, Brenden, you're on the hot seat now. We'll keep the hot seat question sort of around what's going on right now. Immediately you're thinking, where does Vladdy go?
I told you earlier, it's the Angels, And like I said, I have sources from close to negotiations that there's a very competitive offer on the floor right now. I think the Angels, more than any other team, have what it takes to get it done.
Fair enough. All right, Tim, you want to ask him a question?
Yeah. So if it is Toronto, so if it is Anaheim and they give a bunch of prospects and they really help Toronto move up, what does that do to what the Orioles' plans are for this year? Do they feel, depending on who you get, obviously, who they get, would you be looking to upgrade to try to compete?
It would put a lot of pressure on my organization to get younger, because as it stands, I have a very old organization, and it would put a lot of pressure on me to find a way to stay competitive while also acquiring young talent to compete over the next couple of years.
Interesting take. Who's the better third baseman, Brenden? Buster Bluth or Vladimir Guerrero Jr.?
Well, seeing as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is probably a better, is definitely a better first baseman, it's going to be Buster Bluth.
Well, who's the better player then? Let's put it that way.
Well, who's the better player, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Because as your position player, you're evaluated mainly on your bat. Who's the better third baseman? It's Buster Bluth.
Fair enough. All right, you two. It's your turn.
All right. Over under trades in the next 3 months for the Atlanta Braves. I'm setting the line at 10.
I'll take the under.
Take the under?
Under.
Who is untouchable on your team?
Aiden Pearson.
And even he could be had for the right price.
Nope. That one is a, I don't care if you offer me 380/80s. He is, I have loyalty to him, obviously being my created player and knowing what I can do with him. He will be on my team.
So the Cubs offer you Herbeck Jr., Danny Smith, and some other guy wearing a Cubs hat, and you wouldn't think twice about that.
I can't say I wouldn't.
Then he ain't untouchable, buddy.
Okay, I'll put it to you this way. No one's untouchable, and anyone has a price tag on him. I'm just telling you Pearson's price tag is almost as high as Snoop Dogg.
That's fair. It's kind of like how what Head says about Eric Kelly. Any deal that he'd accept would be declined by Kamish.
Exactly. Like that's how I have to put
as well.
All right, ladies. Do you have anyone else? Anything else? Any other hot seat questions?
You did well. You didn't crack.
You know what? You asked me what I thought the most likely destination was, and we talked a little bit about it in the episode, but where do you, in your heart of hearts, think he's going to end up going?
Los Angeles Dodgers.
Ooh, okay.
I think they have the talent and they have the ability to do it with that team. And, you know, Chris, I don't know much about. I haven't had much conversation with Chris before. And
Chris is a shark.
Chris can make a deal happen. Chris can really make a deal happen. Well, I think this is like the precipice that Here's Why You're Wrong was built off of, this sort of style of back and forth, talking with people, bringing them in, getting thoughts and feedback of not just from GMs or me and myself, but this was a lot of fun. Tim, I'd like to thank you for joining us. It was a lot of fun having a CCP, not a GM, who sees it from a completely different lens than the rest of us.
Glad to. Anytime.
We appreciate it.
You're a natural here.
You're a natural. We love it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I didn't sing. Thank God.
Hey, you didn't. I mean, give it to you. You can't not. You can't not.
I was born to love you. Wait, now we got to go another inning and a half?
Yeah, there you go.
2.5 innings.
There you go. Tim, we appreciate you. Brenden, as always, we appreciate you, even if your takes are stupid. As always, you know, we appreciate you. I know my takes are just as bad half the time. So
I just roll my eyes at a lot of what he says.
I am fully aware.
You're only the reigning American League champ. That's all.
Yeah, and I forget, what was the Braves record in your first year?
And with that, we'll go ahead and bye. Andrew, this time I'm not cutting off the recording early because I don't suck this time. And we appreciate all you guys for listening to us. Depending on when this comes out, Kamish could be live tomorrow or currently live with the eMLB charity stream, Kicking Cancer in the Ass. Make sure you help us out. Donate at the link below, as well as go check out the Twitch channel of everyone involved. Join the Discord to hear more of these stories about Ed Brown, Danny Smith Jr., as well as any of the other CCPs we have in this universe, as well as all 30 GMs. We got some great season preview articles coming out with a little extra incentive brought in by Kamish, as well as some of the best and worst takes you'll hear anywhere on this side of the Mississippi. So make sure you come and check those out. We appreciate all you guys for listening. Once again, thank you to Kamish, thank you to our editor, Anju, and thank you to all of you guys for listening. So until next time, we appreciate you joining us.